Our cultural authority figures, the people who decide what we're supposed to think and what we're supposed to do and what our values and goals and aspirations are supposed to be, have become very alarmed by a perverse and dangerous new trend among young women in particular. Of course, I'm not talking about the trend where young women have their breasts removed and then start injecting themselves with testosterone so that their hair falls out and they grow beards and they become infertile. The gatekeepers are not concerned about that trend at all. If anything, they're worried that the trend isn't even more popular than it already is. No, instead, they're deeply worried about women who choose the so-called trad wife lifestyle. Over the past couple of years, a growing number of women have started posting TikTok videos describing and documenting their day-to-day existence as trad wives, quote unquote. What is a trad wife? Well, she is a woman who stays home to take care of the house, takes care of the children while her husband goes to work. She does most of the cooking and the cleaning. She handles the lion's share of the domestic labor while relying on her husband to be the provider and breadwinner. In other words, she is just a normal woman doing what many millions of other normal women have done before her. Which is why my only objection really to the trad wife trend is that we're calling it a trend and we're giving it a cutesy name and a hashtag. That's my only problem with it. My wife would fit the description of a quote-unquote trad wife, but not because she's taking part in a TikTok trend. We've been living this way for 10 years. And I wouldn't really call it a lifestyle either, but rather a system that works for us, just as it has worked for the majority of families all over the world since the dawn of human civilization. Even before the industrial age and the advent of the modern 9-to-5 job, before that, the phrase or the term stay-at-home mom didn't
systems. Can we give these people like a history lesson? Historically, the statement, "it takes a village to raise a kid," was literally true. That collectively, villages, small towns and cities, you would know all of your neighbors would know you, and generally in your family there was a craft that you did, that you worked on, and you and everybody else raised everyone's kids. Women didn't just like stay at home and do nothing but raise kids and clean their 2x4 apartment. They didn't do that. Women usually had jobs either as like tailors, or they worked on farms, or they worked in some type of manufacturing. Like, women did physical labor, and there was a communal raising of children. You want to know why? Because we didn't have fucking machines. This was before the Industrial Revolution. We didn't have the ability to allow women to just stay at home and only take care of housework. This idea that women just stayed home and just did nothing but raise kids it's just nonsense. No, people worked to their fucking bones. No, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure history began in 1950. You might be right. You might be right.
Still, even then, most families featured a man who would go out, whether to the fields to farm or the forest to hunt or later to the office to earn a paycheck, and a woman who stays in the home to care for the children. This is
so pathetic, dude.
Standard arrangement. The women on TikTok aren't inventing a trend.
Did people forget where the term milkmaid came from? Did people already so quickly forget this? It's not even true. I just don't get why it's not even true. Hold up, wait, there's a chatter in chat that I wanted to... Hassan is so boring. All his takes is what the majority of leftists think. Simp. Lol. Shut the fuck up, Hassan. Please, no more Hassan. Question mark, what are you talking about? You know, you've been brainwashed into thinking that women have stayed at home doing labor forever, and that's not true. Here, a quick Google search. Just a quick Google search will show you that even in the United States, this wasn't true. Women worked on farms. Yes, take my cookies. This isn't very trad of her. Why doesn't she go home and go back to cooking and cleaning? It's almost like if you want to look at trad wives, just look at Amish communities. Amish women do so much physical labor. Amish women could probably beat the shit out of you. Amish women have like the grip strength of like the average bodybuilder. Like they could grab your arm and split it in half without even with ease. Okay? Because Amish women be working. They be working. This idea that it's like
they're to the fields to farm or the forest to hunt or later to the office to earn a paycheck, and a woman who stays in the home to care for the children.
This is not even correct. This is not even like true. This is not even historically accurate.
It's a very
milkmaid grip.
standard arrangement. The women on TikTok aren't inventing a trend, but rather they're partaking in a way of life that is ancient and enduring.
It is not ancient. It's not ancient. Food was so scarce. During like the hunter-gatherer times, food was so scarce and everyone lived in fucking like caves. What the fuck was the woman supposed to do? Sorry, sweetie, I need you to go hunt for us because I'm dusting off this area of the cave and then later I'll dust off that area of the cave. What? That's so nonsense. No, that would never happen. Food was really like scarce. Everybody went and tried to pursue food. Because that's what you had to do so you could survive. This idea that like, no. Women could have never been hunting. As if like half of hunting isn't being able to shoot a bow and arrow, which women can do. And setting traps, which women can do. You're never like physically wrestling a deer to try and kill it. You know, like that's not like what's happening.
And battle tested. But that's not how the left sees it. As an article on foxnews.com reports, quote, donning elaborate dresses, fastening an apron around their waist, and popping in their finest pearl earrings, or at least some iteration of pearls, for another round of household chores or cooking, more and more young women are following in the footsteps of the quintessential mid-century housewife, thanks to the latest TikTok trend. But
no, head batter, I'm sorry. Yeah, here you go, man. I got you here. 30 minutes.
Some women are eager to shirk all the hustle and bustle of today's corporate world and channel Barbara Billingsley as June Cleaver. Others are none too happy with the trend. Quote, the new trend for submissive women has a dark heart and history, reads one headline from The Guardian. An article from Hypebae slapped the videos as disturbing, writing that they, quote, typically feature a cis straight white woman longing for the 50s, an era where some women could opt out of participating in the corporate working world and be stay-at-home mothers instead. And a third from Grazia magazine accused the trend of, quote, romanticizing an era where sexism and racism ruled. We can also add a recent CNN article which calls trad wives, otherwise known as housewives or stay-at-home moms, a, quote, fringe subculture. Meanwhile, a piece by Insider says that many of these women are promoting white supremacist views. This was the argument made this week in a video by a left-wing media organization called Novara Media. A woman named Ash Sarkar argues that trad wives are really just agents of a far-right political agenda. Here she is.
Though the idea of women being confined to the home while men do...
And yeah, this. 1 second. Even in pre-colonial Africa, women were crucial to agriculture, local religion, beliefs, and even beer brewing, and that wasn't that long ago. The whole like woman staying at home, taking care of the kids is like a modern invention that like only has occurred very, very, very recently.
Things like go outside and work isn't exactly new.
I'm actually not sure. Maybe I'm going to ask you guys. I've been trying to look for it and I haven't been able to find it. So I wanted to ask you guys and see if you guys can see if you guys can find it. There was a tweet that came out a while ago and it was basically like there was one poster who was saying like we need to return to the 50s or whatever, back when we had trad wives, back when we had real feminine women. And then someone quote tweeted him and said, "You fucking moron. That's a harlot. This is a real trad wife." And it was like a picture of a very Nordic looking woman. And she's like chopping lumber. And this guy is saying, that's not trad wife. This is trad wife. Women who used to be able to fucking chop firewood to keep the house warm. Women who used to be able to like fucking skin animals so that they could make the leather in their house and cook the meat. They didn't just go to the grocery store, get some ground beef. They got the animal, they skinned it, they fucking butchered it, then they fucking ground it, and then they cooked it. That's a real trad wife. This is a pathetic soy cuck version of trad wifery. And that is the most accurate thing on the planet. It's the most accurate thing on the planet.
Image of 1950s suburban domesticity has been given a new lease of life by the gals on TikTok.
Can you imagine? Me, the wife of that boorish, brainless madame.
Some younger millennials and Zoomers have decided to embrace living la vida casserole, dedicating themselves to cooking, cleaning, and child rearing while their husbands or boyfriends, chop firewood or go to their job in human resources. And look, I'm not saying there's anything inherently degrading about being a mum or making nice meals. I like cooking elaborate dinners. For that matter, my boyfriend does too. But the trad wife trend isn't just a way to talk about the experience of being a woman and doing domestic labor. It's saying that being a woman or expressing your femininity most fully means doing all the domestic labor. Men and women are meant to have rigidly distinct roles in the home, in their relationships, and crucially, in economic activity. So this isn't just about personal choice or individual preferences. It's advancing a right-wing political ideology and dressing it up as a lifestyle.
But she's right. But she's right.
So why is this important? 3 things. These women are often really young, in their 20s, and they're preaching the values of submitting to a husband to an audience of other young women. The tradwife trend doesn't exist in isolation. It's linked to deeply regressive political and social movements such as Christian and white nationalism and anti-feminism.
Feminism is not
Why, Matt Walsh, why would you put this video in your video? It's roasting the shit out of you.
ideology which cannot be defended by feminists.
It's part of a wider shift of young people being dissatisfied with neoliberalism and wanting social change.
Well, she's right about that last point. Not any of the rest of it, but the last point anyway. But before we flesh that out, let's consider a few other points. First, you see how stigmatization is perhaps the left's most common and useful tool. Always has been. I mean, even as they claim that they want people to be free to live their lives without judgment, the truth is that they have a very rigid idea about what sorts of lifestyles should be embraced. And the standard is very simple, actually. It's not complicated. We should celebrate any and all lifestyles that would not be traditionally considered normal. Okay? That's the one rule. So live how you want.
And here, someone in chat posted a really, really excellent article about hunting and men and women hunting, which is really, this explains it better than I could. So let me read it out. Hunting and childcare. One prominent explanation elaborated in 1970 by feminist anthropologist Judith Brown is that the demands of hunting conflict with the provision of childcare. This was supported in a recent review of women's hunting that surveyed traditional societies around the world. The authors found that pregnant or lactating women do not often hunt. Those with dependents only hunt when childcare is available or rich hunting grounds are close to camp. These constraints play a role in shaping risk preferences. In hunter-gatherers, men's hunting is risky, meaning it carries a high chance of failure. Men tend to hunt alone or in small groups and target big game with projectile weapons, which often requires fast-paced, long-distance travel. In contrast, women prefer to hunt in groups and focus on smaller, easier-to-capture prey, closer to camps, often with the aid of dogs. Women are often crucial to the hunting success of others, whether through logistical or ritual assistances. Husbands and wives sometimes work collaboratively. In these instances, women may help trap an animal, then club it to death and carry the meat home. And in big game hunting societies, women provide support to hunters by manufacturing clothing, weaponry, and transportation equipment. They may also participate in hunting directly by locating, surrounding, and driving game towards a killing location, as seen among high-latitude reindeer hunters and plain bison hunters. As the authors of this new paper speculate, this is likely how the Peruvian female hunters killed game. This idea that women were home cleaning and cooking and feeding kids is a complete joke. That this was the traditional society that has existed forever is nonsense. Women either went and hunted with men or they did physical labor. Manufacturing clothing and weapons. They had female blacksmiths fucking preparing the bows and arrows and spears, and they would be like, all right, I was working all night on this, but it's a good sword. Take it out there. Like this idea that women were like, okay, well, time to go finish cleaning. Okay, well, time to go finish taking care of the kid because that's all my feeble female hands can do. It's not even remotely realistic. It's not realistic at all. Oh gosh. Also, yeah, this as well. No one questioned that hunting is hard, but early anthropologists often assumed women's gathering was simple and easy. This turns out to be wrong. Like hunting, gathering demands extensive ecological knowledge and skill that is socially learned and cultivated over a lifetime. As a result, hunter-gatherers face tough choices about how to divide difficult labor in a 24-hour day. Like, you have to understand, if you lived as a hunter-gatherer, you had a minimum amount of time that you had to find food so you could keep living. So that you didn't starve in the fucking winter. There's only 24 hours a day, and you have to sleep for 8 of them. This idea that half the population was just sitting around cleaning areas because they could, no, that's not what was happening. We now exist with like machinery and shit and like automation that we should be able to have more free time to do what we want. You know? Because of just like the amount of technology that we have today. But that wasn't this. Yeah. Yeah, this. Gathering is super easy. Just pick the funky red berry and oops, that one was poison. Yeah. So anyways. All right. Going back to the video.
Just don't be normal. That's why they use a term like fringe subculture to describe a housewife in an apron who would, but they would never put such a label on a man in a wig and a skirt standing up to pee in the women's restroom. He's not part of a fringe subculture. Instead, a 25-year-old woman with 2 kids and a husband baking a casserole, she's the fringe weirdo, the degenerate pervert.
I mean, historically, yeah, historically she is part of a fringe culture today. That's what fringe culture is. Fringe culture is just something that people don't subscribe to that often in this day and age. And that's what she's doing. It is fringe culture. It doesn't mean that it's bad. If you're like emo, punk, goth or whatever, that's also part of some fringe culture. Doesn't mean that it's bad or good. If you want to stay home and you want to raise kids, fucking amazing. Are you kidding me? Fucking, I would fucking bet that half the men in here would be totally down to have a fucking dommy mommy that goes out, works a 9-to-5 shift, and they get to spend their day cooking and cleaning and playing with the cats. Like, no one is saying that being a trad wife or a trad husband or whatever is bad. You can do whatever you want with your life, but pretending like it was better in the 50s, it's just historically not accurate. You know? That's why people get frustrated, because you're promoting an ideology, you're promoting this like lifestyle, and you're trying to like idealize it by pushing nostalgia that isn't realistic. You unleashed something in chat. Nobody cares. Nobody. There isn't a single leftist that gives a fuck what you do in your personal time. That's the whole that's literally what being a progressive means. Being a progressive means you fight for people's choice to do whatever the fuck they want to do. If you want to be tatted from like eyeballs all the way to toes, fucking go for it. If you don't want to get tattoos, go for it. You want to be a stay-at-home wife? Go for it. You don't want to? Go for it. Just do what you want to do. The government exists to be able to subsidize your lifestyle choices, no matter what they are. But instead, in modern society, we just exist to be money-making devices for our corporation overlords, for our corporate overlords.
Now, it seems for Lent this year, the left is giving up all morality and common sense, but you don't have to do the same. You can choose today to strengthen your faith in spite of this broken world through prayer, meditation, and fasting. Join me and thousands of others on Hallow, the
not this fucking app. This app is like a straight-up scam.
#1 Christian prayer app in the U.S. As Christians, we're called to abstain from luxuries during Lent and instead more deeply embrace our faith. Hallow is here to help me maintain.
Speaking of Lent, by the way, chat, it is Ramadan. So Ramadan Kareem, to anyone who is practicing.
That promise and a daily
Imagine having to pay to pray, by the way.
With all the time, but especially until Easter, and it can help you do the same. Download the app for free at hallow.com/Matt Walsh. You can set prayer reminders. You can track your progress along the way as well. If you're not sure where to start, well, you can check out Father Mike Schmitz's Bible in a Year podcast, available on the Hallow app for brief daily Bible readings.
Oh my God, please, I don't care.
You can custom exclusive slides.
That was the longest ad read of my life.
Now, if that same woman was doing all the same things, but happened to actually be
yeah, heaven is paywalled. You actually can subscribe to the channel for just $4.99 or with Prime, and I will get you into heaven, I promise. Okay? If you donate bits, the bit message is read directly to God. I don't know if anyone knows this. We do currently have a limited time sponsorship with God that if you donate any bits to the channel and you TTS, that message gets directly put in God's inbox. He reads it immediately. Your prayers get priority over everybody else who isn't paying. It's completely true, completely accurate.
And then she, or he in this case, would be revered as a bold and powerful woman daring to live her life as she wishes. The problem with the actual real woman living this way is that she, again, is normal. And while they shame normalcy as perverse and they treat perversion as normal, they somehow have succeeded in convincing many conservatives to not respond in kind, as we should. So they will openly call stay-at-home moms a fringe subculture, while insisting that we must never use such language to describe lifestyles that are actually degenerate. And again, many conservatives willingly play along with this. They willingly play by this rule. The left accuses the trad wife of engaging in a political act.
Please, God, strike down that
Walsh. But the
Walsh.
truth is that, you know, what they're really angry about is they're angry that she isn't engaging in a political act. She's simply living in a way that is healthy and traditional, and she's prioritizing her family. She is not turning her entire existence into a political statement. She is focused on things deeper and more meaningful than that. And that is what infuriates them. Remember that these are people who've structured their whole lives around a.
It's crazy that to be like a right-winger, you just have to lie. It's crazy that like to be a right-winger, you can just get on in line and be like, the leftist liberals are so triggered about this one simple trick. And like the examples of the left being triggered is just like, isn't this just a fetish? You're just posting like the trad fetish. That's all you're doing, right? I mean, if you want to do that, I guess. Sure. And that's like, that's being triggered.
Opposing traditional values. They're not even pursuing happiness or fulfillment or meaning. They'll settle for misery so long as their misery is a protest against the value systems they despise. Except that
all right-wing commentators do is lie, eat homophobic chicken, post on Gab, and hate minority.
Value
You're
system.
not wrong.
And that's where the woman in the video had it right, I think. People are deeply dissatisfied with the life that leftism has given them. These so-called trad wives, they grew up in a society that told them that men and women are the same, that we ought to have exactly identical roles in society, that it's demeaning, it's oppressive to prioritize raising children and caring for your family, that fulfillment is found in...
No one has ever said this. No one has even ever said this. Why are there so... Can someone please tell Matt Walsh that he's literally lying to his audience? No one has ever said this. Me when I purposefully spread misinformation.
Serving your boss rather than your spouse, that a strong and independent woman is one who depends on her employer rather than her husband.
Actually, I'm going to say something. I have not seen anyone advocate for stay-at-home mothers nearly as much as leftists. I have seen so many conservatives that will basically be like, women need to stay at home. And then when you push them, their reasoning is like, well, I want a stay-at-home wife that is my slave. That's what I want. I want a slave. And when you ask leftists, they just say, oh, well, you know, all labor is valuable and we should respect all forms of labor. If you appreciate your house being in order and your apartment being clean and your kids being taken care of and food being made, well, then that's labor that's being provided and women should get treated with respect for performing that labor. And then the right is just like, women should stay at home because their estrogen makes it impossible for them to do anything else. It's so weird.
They were raised in a culture that takes all of these ideas for granted. They were socialized and conditioned to accept them as gospel truth. And many of them did for a time. And then discovered that it was all a lie. You know, the most basic problem with leftism is that it is just hollow at its core. It doesn't have an answer, or at least not a satisfying answer, to the question of why we're here on this earth and what we're supposed to be doing with our time. This ambiguity, this lack of answers, is presented to us as freedom. But it's the freedom of being lost in the woods, the freedom of having no idea where to go or why. And that's not freedom, that's abandonment. And this is what has happened to multiple generations of Americans. They've been brought down a path with promises of happiness and fulfillment around the corner, and then they were just left there, abandoned. This is the source of much of the the epidemic of despair, what we now call depression in our society. It stems from this, not from mental illness, but from this. That you have millions of Americans that were led down a path. They said, well, come this way, don't go that way. Okay, that's the way that all of your ancestors went. That's the way that people for thousands of years went. Don't go that way, come this way instead. And all these people listened, and they said, okay, I'll go that way. And then one day they looked around and they said, well, where are we exactly? What's the point of this? Where were you taking us? We're just lost here now, we're stuck. So the people who are returning to traditional lives.
I'm trying really hard not to pause, but man, this motherfucker has like the most boring cadence on the planet. The fucking clay is the only thing keeping me focused. What is he even talking about? Who gave Grandpa the microphone? He's just rambling.
Who are making the radical decision to focus on their families and their marriages and so on. These are people simply deciding to live with some sense of direction.
What the fuck? I didn't realize he just rambles about nonsense like this. He just like, what are you even... Way to keep it as deliberately vague as possible. You know the saddest thing? He wasn't even capable of showing one example of a leftist being triggered. He just posted a video of a person saying, this is what this lifestyle is about, and this is the reason why people link it to the alt-right. It's because it promotes and romanticizes a period of time where obviously one group of people had all of the power, and it ignores all of the very real, terrible things about the 50s. You weren't allowed to be gay. You weren't allowed to be not white. You weren't allowed to be any type of mentally ill. You just weren't allowed. It wasn't possible.
DJ Soul 300. I bear witness that there is no deity but God, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of God. There, chat. You are all Muslim now.
That video he showed made him look stupid. I don't even know why there was more after he showed that. I know. It's so sad.
Dude is mad depressed sage.
Also, he's not refusing a single one of the claims. He's just saying it's bad. He's just saying it's bad, and then he's just saying, look at how triggered they are. I swear, they're triggered. They got to be here somewhere. There's got to be some triggered leftists around here somewhere. And then there's just no triggered leftists anywhere. Spreading the word, Matt's wife found child porn on their home computer. He's claiming it's evidence in his crusade against LGBTQ folks. And it's the only thing holding them together. Are you serious? No way. Okay, but he was also the same guy who was like advocating that the age of consent need to be lowered to 16. You know, like Matt Walsh was literally arguing this shit. Wait, he did?